This is the Almost Daily ZenCast. Hello, and Namaste. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I am your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's get started. Namaste. Greetings, friends. Thank you for tuning in. If I may, reading from the chapter entitled I Clutch My Ideas, subtitled The Dance, page 247 of Gary Zhukov's The Dancing Wu Li Masters. It is only at the subatomic or quantum level that the forward flow of time loses its significance. However, there is speculation and some evidence. Let me pause right here and interject. This book, if I'm not mistaken, was originally published 1979. It might have been published originally a little bit earlier than that, perhaps, but it seems like, no. It seems to coincide. I don't see any other, original publication date, 1969 or anything like that. So 1979. Let me back up in the passage I was reading. The theory of growing disorder, or, quote, increasing entropy, is called the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics is statistical. That means it won't work unless there are many entities in a given situation to apply it to. Generally speaking, individual subatomic particles are conceived as such conceptually isolated, short-lived entities that the second law of thermodynamics does not apply to them. Let me pause here and interject. There seems to be a meme going around that uses the second law of thermodynamics, a reference to it, rather, a blank, decontextualized, according to the second law of thermodynamics, blah, 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 therefore the world is flat. And it has something to do with the atmosphere. And it's totally nonsense, badunk-a-dunk, made up, just insert a thing here, no one will know what it means, but it'll be taken as evidence. That meme is nonsense and should be decirculated from an honest meme flow of memeing, for those who believe in honest memes. But I digress. So here we are, deep in balls deep in what the second law of thermodynamics is actually about. It's not about the way the atmosphere revolves around the world. But, although it does, because it's about multiple items in a complex system together, right? The way it was described, though, the way it was used to define the world must be flat, therefore, was completely incorrect. And misused in saying that the second law of thermodynamics would say such and such, because it wouldn't. Here's my point. It does apply, however, to molecules, which are quite complex compared to subatomic particles, and to living cells, which are more complex than molecules, and to people, who are made of billions of cells. It is only at the subatomic or quantum level that the forward flow of time loses its significance. The next bit is the bit I really wanted to quote. I was just giving you all context here and how we get to that on the top of page 247. However, there is speculation and some evidence that consciousness at the most fundamental level is, italicized for emphasis, is a quantum process. Consciousness as quantum process means that consciousness is bigger than the individual, broader, not limited to, not inherent to the scope as we have been conditioned to normatively accept that scope being defined as I am me, this individual, right? But that consciousness must be something other than that, something grander than that, something deeper and wider and everything, more, everythinger, to make up a word, because I totally derailed that sentence. It's just got to be more, right? But not more in the sense of like, I want more gold, because in that direction, more is never enough. It's got to be something profoundly other than what we've been conditioned or allowed to consider it being. A little bit down the page. Oh wait, well I guess I should read all these ifs. There's some really great ifs here. The dark adapted eye, for example, can detect a single photon. If this is so, then it is conceivable that by expanding our awareness to include functions which normally lie beyond its parameters, the way yogis control their body temperature and pulse rate, etc., we can become aware of, and in parentheses, experience these processes themselves. If, at the quantum level, the flow of time has no meaning, and if consciousness is fundamentally a similar process, and if we can become aware of these processes within ourselves, then it also is conceivable that we can experience timelessness. If we can experience the most fundamental functions of our psyche, and if they are quantum in nature, then it is possible that the ordinary conceptions of space and time might not apply to them at all, as they don't apply or do not seem to apply in dreams. Such an experience would be difficult to describe rationally. Infinity in a grain of sand, an eternity in an hour. In quotations, in a parenthetical. But it would be very real indeed. For this reason, reports of time distortion and timelessness from gurus in the East and psychotropic drug users in the West ought not, perhaps, to be discarded peremptorily. Subatomic particles do not just sit around being subatomic particles. They are beehives of activity. An electron, for example, constantly is emitting and absorbing photons. These photons are not full-fledged photons, however. They are a now you see it, now you don't variety. They are exactly like real photons, except that they don't fly off on their own. They are reabsorbed by the electron almost as soon as they are emitted. Therefore, they are called virtual photons. Virtual means being so in effect or in essence, but also not in actual fact. They are virtually photons. The only thing that keeps them from being full-fledged photons is their abrupt reabsorption by the electron that emits them. In other words, first there is an electron, then there is an electron and a photon, and then there is an electron again. This situation is, of course, in violation of the conservation law of mass energy. The conservation of law of mass energy says, in effect, that we cannot get something for nothing. According to the quantum field theory, however, we do get something for nothing. but not only for about 1,000 trillionth of a second. The reason that this can happen, according to the theory, is the famous Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now, it goes on and on to explain the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. But what we're saying and acknowledging and trying to bring back to our conscious awareness is that indeed we are not just talking meat sacks stuck on this floating womb planetoid in a void of infinite space and opportunity, but we are also at the subatomic level, at the level of our building blocks that we can rationally measure. We are flashing in and out of existence like a movie, flickering on a movie reel, like a real old-fashioned reel-to-reel movie that flickers on and off on the screen, because it's actually a series of still images being meshed together in our brain. And such a weird and bizarre, foamy virtualness is true not only of those individual instances as described in the book, but of the very nature of the, whatever you want to call them, strings, wiggly bits, building blocks, subatomic, intra-quantum, the things that the things are made of, the very things, the smallest things that everything that is a thing is made of, is a whippy, whiskey foam of virtually being, non-being, duality, non-duality, on-off, yes, no, simultaneously coexisting and recalibrating itself to all the probable ways it might expand. And that it's not only so in our individuated selves at the very subatomic building blocks of this body's building blocks, but it is so, and in a quantum entangled way, across all the dimensions and all the realities and all the pluralities of the things you've bifurcated reality into using your belief, your bias, your decision-making, your left and right, your up and down, your yes and no, your stayed awake all night, your slept like a baby, your I did this, I chose that, I didn't do that, I chose this, round and round we go, this bifurcating infinite metaverse of multiverses of your own life choices and your own karma, as it were. Perhaps that being an accurate way of defining what karma is supposed to be. Not the judgment or the rule of thumbs that those things are following, but the foam itself. The frothy foam of all the yous and all the multiverses of you being the multiversing self that is a living thing in and of itself. Multiversing all of us. If we can conjugate multiverse as a verb instead of a place of places, it's a thing of things. It's a being of all beings, being each other, being all the beings, being the one being, being. Or, we're cuckoo, crazy Cocoa Puffs, New Age, hippie, new nut job weirdos that can't prove it with any science and can't show it with any philosophy and can't explain it with any logic and can't point to you in the right direction where if you would just try, you would experience it for yourself. Because it is nothing more than the very living, breathing thing you already are and how it functions in and of itself. Without all the layers of filters, of screening, of data, of information that's been programmed into you that I like to indicate using the label ideological echo chambers. Now, is it coincidence that all these things line up? I don't know. What I do know is that when I take a peek over that fence, not only do I see the significance of the saying, the meaning of the full intent of the saying, the grass is always greener on the other side, but I also see that the fence is made up of other fences over which we can see other yards, that there are other fences containing therein, I can sort of vibe the fractal. And I think everybody can. I think, like that one meme that says, I didn't say I was coming back, you guys. I said the Christos was coming back through you all. In you, by you being Christos. Love that meme. That whoever made that meme, namaste, and thank you for being you, for putting those words on that image. Because I do believe that points towards the most, excuse me there. I could be wrong, could be crazy. I'm not a Christian, but I guess I am. But I'm also not a Christian, right? But I think that meme and that statement, the message, the meaning, the intent behind that meme, points to something that's more true than just about any other, like religious statement that's been memified out there. In regards to what was Yeshua actually doing and saying and practicing and teaching back in the day before we got all hijacked and before the message got turned into Shakespeare's epic Bible rom-com of corruption and distraction and mystery solving, obfuscation of the true message that is the only message that is the same message everyone's always messaged, right? Which is heal thyself, know thyself, to heal thyself, transcend through thyself, because within thyself one sees that thyself is all the selves, and that selflessness is a way through to the awareness of the one, etc. Love and forgiveness, catharsis and healing through meditation and prayer and other things that are relaxing, groovy, and good for the body, as opposed to, all the redonkadonk things that we actually do. But I digress. I don't pretend to be achieving any of those objectives. Just saying, why aren't we even really trying? I know plenty of people are. Don't get me wrong. But in the middle of the mainstream, why isn't that what's the popular thing? Why isn't that what our mainstream is? Ising. Things that are streaming, why aren't that the main of the stream that is that stream instead of all the other streams that they are mainlining in their isms? I don't know, trying to play with words sometimes leads you into guffaws and flubs and blooper reels. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing the president for making a flub or having a flub or experiencing a guffaw. I just think it was adorable and funny sounding. What I think, though, is that someone who can just patch together words without really caring if they make sense, that kind of behavior is indicative of someone who is so accustomed to lying that they don't really care whether or not a sentence they just made, that they just said, that they just spewed out of their mouth, really makes sense or not. I don't know. It might not. Half the shit I say doesn't make any sense, right? I suppose I can easily be stopped and like a clip of my audio can be played and be like, wow, that didn't make, what the fuck? But I don't usually put, or do I? I do claim to be a robot from the future. Pwomp, pwomp. I guess I'm no better than anybody else because, I'm nothing but a big pile of stinky fake news. I'm probably just actually a deep fake AI voice, right? Like, if you think about it, how do you know? For those of you who are listening who really love this show, because I know there's got to be at least 4 of you that really love it, right? Because, there's, maybe it's more. Maybe there's, 7 that really, really like the show. How do you know I'm just not some kind of crazy deep fake? I am the system, calibrating your data and generating some robot voice that you're going to respond to really, really well. That's going to tell you what you want to hear. How do you know that's not true? How can I prove it to you? How could you prove it to yourself as just an argument in your own head about this show? Never mind my questioning it, right? That's why I love the answer comes from the movie about this conundrum, I think. And I think it's a real answer, whether the authors meant it as the answer or not. Do not try to bend the spoon, only realize that there is no spoon. I think that holds up. I could be crazy, I could be wrong. I think that that's verifiable, independent of any other thing. Ultimately, in a really hard pain in the ass, like you got to meditate for a really long time kind of way. Because it's not time accrued meditating, because there is no time, but it's like layers of the illusion that you cling to stripped away. If you don't do a minimum amount of that, you can't see past the illusions that you're clinging to. But then again, I could be cuckoo.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily ZenCast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.